everyone. Welcome, welcome. Oh my goodness.
It is, in fact, good that you are still alive. To also enjoy things like Hot Girl Twitch, AllysinKay Dance, AllysinKay Dance, AllysinKay.
Thank you so much, Adrian, for the 300 bits. Yes, my purpose, the reason I was able to stay alive is because my true purpose is Hot Girl Twitch. That is why I'm here. That is why I was given more years. No, but for real, thank you. I really do appreciate that. I did not realize that it had already been, what, 6 years? That's crazy. Crazy. If you don't know, should I tell the story? I feel like all of you have already heard the story. I don't want to bore you with the details of me almost dying. No biggie. Omega said, being alive is my favorite activity. Same. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it here. Everything's fine. No, Burger King, it was not pneumonia. It was blood clots. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of people who don't know. Okay, I guess I gotta tell the story anyway. I'll try to keep it short. 2.5 hours from now, I'm gonna say long story short. Let me tell the story real quick. Shall we? Okay, so I found out that I had blood clots in my lungs during impact tapings, January 2018. I think we were like 3 or 4 days in to the tapings. I think we had one more day to go. I was having some rib pain and some back spasms. So I thought that I had injured myself during wrestling. I was having really tight back spasms all the way up the left side of my back. I thought maybe I had twisted a rib. I remember talking to Taya about it specifically, and her talking about the time that she had a rib that was basically dislodged, twisted a little bit. And so I thought maybe that could be it. Maybe my rib was twisted out of place. I knew it wasn't broken. I knew it wasn't fractured because that would be unbearable. I remember it was probably like 3 days into tapings. That day, I went to go see one of the... I don't know what she was. She wasn't the doctor. She was like the step down from the doctor, not the nurse. She was something else. Like maybe it's just like a sports therapist or something. Whoever I saw, she kind of massaged my back a little bit and put KT tape around me, which knowing now what it ended up being, knowing now that it was blood clots is why I was in pain, is kind of funny that she was like wrapping me in KT tape, but she didn't know. She doesn't know any better. But she was kind of like just doing what she could if it was some type of back strain. And then she's like, see the doctor as soon as he gets in. So he gets there. I go see him. He's poking around at my ribs. He's like, you definitely don't have a broken rib. You definitely don't have a fractured rib, because if you did, you'd be jumping off the table when I'm poking you. So he knew it wasn't that, but he was like, I'm going to give you some Motrin, I think is what he gave me. But I don't have equipment here. Like I obviously can't scan you. So if this doesn't help or it's still bothering you tomorrow, go to the hospital. Which was great advice. That's exactly the advice that he needed to give me, because that's what I ended up needing to do. So later that day, the Motrin, I think, started wearing off as a bunch of us were out to eat. A lot of times after the tapings, we would go out to eat. I think we were at Ale House. That was a very frequented spot during that time, during that era of Impact. When we were taping at Universal, we would go to Ale House after. And I remember sitting there and telling Courtney Rush that I remember just sitting there eating, and we were done. We were paying. We were about to leave anyway. And I remember just being like, can we go now? Like, all of a sudden, I'm just like, can we go? I knew I was starting to feel pain, and I think the Motrin was wearing off is what was happening. When I tell you, I could barely walk when I got up. I started panicking. I don't know why, as humans, we're so afraid to show pain in front of other people. We're so afraid to go to the hospital. I can't speak for everyone, of course, but I know a lot of people feel this way too. I know I'm not alone in thinking this. For some reason, we feel so embarrassed. So like all these people are around us eating, and I remember standing up and I'm trying so hard to not show that I am in pain, and I'm starting to freak out a little bit because I don't know why this pain has just went from 0 to like a 70, and then I stand up and it's at an 80, and then I start to walk and it's at a 90. It's like slowly increasing. I remember walking through the parking lot, and I was holding Courtney Rush. I was holding Courtney Rush's arm, hunched over. Like I was walking, like I could not stand up straight. It was crazy. So we get in her car. I remember getting into her house and immediately getting on the living room floor. I just dropped to the living room floor and started doing yoga because I thought I pulled a muscle in my back. That's what it felt like. My entire back, everywhere that nurse or trainer earlier had worked on and massaged, was on fire. It hurt so bad. And I'm like, I really pulled my back. I don't know. Especially because that whole time I've been wrestling. So logically, I'm like, I hurt myself wrestling. Something happened in a match. I don't know what it was. There was no one point where I went, oh, it was that in that match. But I'm wrestling during this whole time, like 3 days at this point. And I remember getting on the floor and I'm doing cat-cow pose, on the floor. If you know what that is, you know. If you know, you know. And her cats are all surrounding me, like coming to do it with me. They were probably like, this bitch is dying. You know how animals can sense that? I don't know. Maybe that's why they were surrounding me. But I started stretching. Nothing was helping. I ended up taking another Motrin or something like that to help the pain, I think as I was leaving Ale House. And I remember sitting on the couch, looking at the clock, and it was like, I'm going to guess 1 a.m. And I remember thinking, tomorrow's the last day of tapings. It is 1 a.m. I am in severe pain. I'm not going to be able to sleep. I should just go to the hospital. And I remember telling her, and I don't know why, it felt like it took so much for me to just admit I needed to go to the hospital. So eventually I did. I was like, yeah, we need to go. We need to go to the hospital. And she's like, all right, let's go. So we're driving, and about, 5 minutes into this drive, whatever pain pill I had taken started to kick in. And I had a thought, and thinking about this now is wild, but I had the thought of, we should just turn around. We should just turn around. This is embarrassing. They're probably just going to be like, oh, we can't help you. Your ribs messed up and you just got to rest. Or your back is whatever. You just got to rest. And they're going to put ice on it. And then, yeah, now I'm going to have a hospital bill. Exactly. And I remember thinking, like, it's starting to wear off. Maybe we should just turn around. Imagine if I would have turned around. I probably wouldn't be here, for real. So luckily we didn't. I think I mentioned to her that the pain pill was starting to kick in and I was starting to feel a little better, but I was like, well, we're almost already there. Obviously something is wrong, whatever, let's just go. And I remember her on the drive, she's like, I don't want to freak you out, but basically she thought that it might've been a collapsed lung, which is wild too. Like then I started freaking out about that. Not freaking out, but in my head, I'm like, well, if it's a collapsed lung, that's crazy. I know you can have one collapsed lung and still be breathing, but of course that's not a good thing. You want to get to the hospital ASAP. And that can happen. Like, I think the story that she told me was someone took like a big splash in the corner, boom, their lung collapsed. Wrestling can be so dangerous. It's wild. Like I don't think we ever fully appreciate the toll that we put on our body until we hear stories like that of how something can go so wrong with something that sounds so simple to us. Like, oh, I took a big splash. Oh, my lung collapsed. What? Think about, as a wrestler, I think about all the splashes I've taken and given over the years, where someone just like basically crushes you, and that's normal to us. I'm like, yeah, you want to land on me? Sure. I'd rather do that than bump. Go ahead. Wild. So then I'm like, well, I really hope it's not a collapsed lung. I got my wish. It wasn't a collapsed lung. It was worse. It was worse than a collapsed lung. I remember we got to the hospital. I tell the doctor my symptoms. He gives me a CT scan. And oh my gosh, the man that did my CT scan was the sweetest old man, like the sweetest. He was just, I could tell that he had genuine empathy for me. I couldn't lay straight on the table. I couldn't lay flat. Like I was shaking. Like that's how much pain I was in. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't sit up straight or stand up straight. I was trying to lower onto the CT scan table and I'm like shaking. He's holding my hand to try to I'm like getting emotional telling this story just because he was so sweet. That's the only part I'm emotional about, is that he was so sweet and empathetic, because I feel like a lot of people in hospitals aren't, and it's not their fault necessarily. Sometimes I feel like you can't really be, you deal with so much and you're doing so much, you have to be like straight into the facts, right? But this guy was just so sweet. You have to stay still during a CT scan, and I couldn't. Like, I was trying my best, but I'm just on the table. Like, I remember my back was arched. Like, I could not lay flat. It is wild what your body goes through doing something like this. I got through it enough to where they could actually read a scan, so that was good because I needed that scan. And then Courtney Rush and I are sitting in the room in the hospital, the waiting room, and it's probably like 2 a.m, 3 a.m at this point. I don't even know. I feel like I was texting Scott Demore at 4 a.m. is when I got results. But the doctor comes in, and I'm thinking he's going to say, well, nothing we could do for you. Here's a bill for $1,000 because you just got to put some ice on it. Or he's going to say you have a collapsed lung. To me, I'm like, those are the two options. And then he comes in and he's like, oh, actually, it was a different doctor too. It wasn't the first one I talked to. It was a different guy. The way he came in, the way this man came in and did not make it clear what he was trying to say. So I'm sitting here reading between the lines and not fully understanding what he's getting at, was fucking terrifying. This moment was so terrifying because he comes in and he's just straight faced and he is like, we got your CT scan results back, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I'm really sorry. you have blood clots in both of your lungs. I'm really sorry. We're going to have to admit you immediately. And I'm like, I remember just being like, okay, like, what, okay, so do I have weeks to live? Like, what are you telling me? That's literally what it sounded like, Dave. It sounded like he was just like, well, there's nothing we can do for you. Like, I thought he was going to tell me I have 3 days to live. I'm not kidding. I remember that going through my head specifically. And I was like, and then it was like, okay, well, I'm getting admitted. And then I got some more information that made it sound not so scary. But then once I was actually in the hospital and I was there for 3 days, reading about a blood clot in the lung or a pulmonary embolism, which is what I had, made it even more terrifying and made me realize why that doctor probably sounded like that, because he probably didn't know whether or not they were going to be able to help me, because I had a large blood clot, I think, in my left lung, and then I had another one in my right lung. And even now I'm like, I'm such a hypochondriac too. So like even talking about this, I'm like, take a deep breath, because I couldn't do that. That was one of the symptoms actually, was I could not take a full inhale without an extremely sharp pain at the top of that inhale. And don't freak out, because I know that happens to a lot of people. That has happened to me throughout my entire life, but it goes away relatively quickly. It doesn't last for days. And that's the difference. Is a lot of you have probably experienced that, where you try to take a deep inhale and there's a sharp pain and you're like, oh, and you gotta like twist or you gotta move, or like, you know, in 5 minutes it'll go away. Not that. It's that, but like for 3 days long is what I had. So that is probably why that doctor was very solemn about his news to me, because a pulmonary embolism is very, very serious. And I'm sitting in the hospital bed, you know, day 2 or something. I'm bored. I'm sleeping pretty much the whole time. And I look up the pulmonary embolism and what this means and all that. And it's like, usually the first sign of pulmonary embolism, the first symptom of a pulmonary embolism is, does anyone know in chat? Sudden death. I shit you not. Don't look up WebMD for nothing. Legit. Sudden death was the first symptom. I have goosebumps even talking about this right now. I haven't told this story in a long time. That was terrifying. And I'm like, I shouldn't be reading this. I remember asking one of the nurses, shouldn't I be walking? Because I'm thinking blood clot. I need to start walking. Aren't you supposed to walk? Aren't you supposed to move? I'm thinking about blood clots in the legs. And he's like, no, just go to sleep, basically. And I was like, okay. I feel like I slept for 3 days. I remember Chelsea Green and Courtney Rush coming to the hospital to visit me after tapings were over. A lot of people from Impact text me that next day, because I didn't show up to tapings. And then I'm going to backtrack a little bit, but I'm just now on this train of thought. So that's kind of that was the end of my time at Impact there. I didn't get released. I didn't quit. I was injured, I guess, or sick. I don't really know what you qualify that as. What is a pulmonary embolism? I would say sick, probably, right? It certainly felt like an injury, but my contract expired during that time. So that's why I stopped working for Impact. It sounds so silly, but that is pretty much what happened, is the contract just expired while I was healing. So backtracking a little bit though. So I'm in the hospital and it was so difficult to rest. It was very difficult to rest. I remember asking the nurse a lot, like, I'm like, I am in so much pain. I can't, like, moving, shifting your body, I can't even really explain it. You feel such a soreness on that side. I keep doing this because it's on the left side. Like, laying on that side was so painful. Laying on my back was so painful. I did have my own room, Dave. I did get my own room. They took really good care of me. This hospital in Orlando, they took such good care of me. I remember trying to go to the bathroom, like get up and walk to the bathroom. So difficult. And I remember telling her, like, I'm in so much pain, but they can't just give you more pain meds. Of course, the doctor has to write it off or sign off on it. And I remember telling her, I'm like, look, well, I think they were giving me, not Motrin, what is the M1? Morphine. They were giving me morphine, and morphine sucks, at least in my opinion. It was not helping me. It would wear off so fast. And so the doctor thankfully came in and was like, let's try some anti-inflammatory. And that anti-inflammatory, did the trick. Chef's kiss. That's what was the problem, was there was so much inflammation. That's why I was in so much pain. Calling my mom was very awkward. Like, hey mom, I'm okay, but, you know. So, and I'm in a different state. They can't come visit me, so they're just checking up on me every day. Very Sad Dog said, did TNA cover your medical? Fortunately, I had health insurance. The entire time that I worked for Impact, during the time that I was signed there in 2016 and 2017, and that 1 month in 2018, I actually had an office job. I had an office job the entire time that I was signed to Impact. 2-time Knockouts champion, going to work in an office on Monday. I would just fly home from Orlando. Sometimes I would fly home Monday morning or whatever day, and I had to go straight to work from that. And thankfully, I had this job at that time because I was able to use my health insurance, and I had really good health insurance with this job. I was put on blood thinners, and it was supposed to be for about 6 months. And I remember every morning when I had to wake up to take my medicine, just it was so painful to sleep. Like I think I've just blocked a lot of that out, but oh my gosh. Dave said you had a Patreon too, which helped a little. Patreon helps so much. You all who helped support me during that time on Patreon, for real, I could never thank you enough. Seriously. I was supposed to be on blood thinners for 6 months. I ended up being on them for maybe closer to 8 because I got off them relatively close to the Mae Young Classic. Yes, Nefarious, the Mae Young Classic was my first match back after all of that. So when you're on blood thinners like that, it is advised you don't do any type of combat or anything dangerous at all, because if you cut yourself, you might not stop bleeding. And also, not just cut yourself, but if you have like a head trauma, if you hit your head and you have brain bleeding, it won't stop and you will go bye-bye. So, to put it lightly. So, I did not train in mixed martial arts during that time. I did not wrestle. I was not about to be like, oh, no worries, like I'm just gonna do it anyway. No, I was not around. Because I was not about to find out, you know what I mean? I got into the ring like 1 or 2 weeks right before the Mae Young Classic. That was the first time I got in the ring to do any type of preparation for the Mae Young Classic. Luckily, I had all the experience up to that point to get me through it, but I remember the training for it, the couple times that I got in the ring were brutal. Like those first bumps back sucked. Oh my gosh, they suck so bad. And I remember the training just being so rough. Like I was like, oh, I don't know about this. And it was a godsend that I was given Mia Yim for that first round, because this was a dance we have done for over a decade at this time. So many times all over the world. The Frenemy World Tour really came in clutch there because, oh my gosh, like it was just like riding a bike. A bike that's on fire, no pressure. And that's a whole story for another day. I know I told that story too, but I'm not even gonna get into it right now because I feel like I've already been rambling way too much. But just about how like my paperwork for me being cleared from that blood clot almost didn't come through in time for the Mae Young Classic, like down to the last second. That was a little bit of a stressful year, just a tad. Long story short, look at me. I'm only, how long has it been? 35 minutes instead of 2 hours. I'm doing great. All that to say, thank you so much for all of your support. For real. Estilo said, I'm glad you're on the other side of that. Me too. Now, don't get me wrong. Every time I have a little bit of a sharp pain in my left side, when I take a deep breath or anything like that, I of course have that sudden panic of like, it's happening again. Dave said, so what caused the clot? Do you know? That's a great question. I work with a hematologist and what's the other one? Rheumatologist. And try to rule out basically what it is and what it's not. Basically, it can't be proven, but what my hematologist and I both believe is that it was from the birth control pill. Birth control pills can fuck us up. Fuck us up. It is not worth it. It really isn't. Dave said, so can having a baby. Yes, but funny enough, the reason I was on birth control was because of my skin. That is a common thing. Like, it can help clear acne. Not worth it for that. Obviously, people can do whatever they want. I'm not going to tell people, like, don't do that. But I would warn people now, especially. I will never, ever take birth control pills ever again. I really do believe that's what almost killed me, because that can be a side effect. So there's that. And my doctor's like, at the time, she's like, you're under 30, you're healthy, you don't smoke, you're an athlete. Like, the only thing that looks like it could have been a factor is medication that you were taking. And the only medication that I was on at that time was birth control pills. So, whew, y'all, you got to be careful with that shit. It is scary. Not only that, but like I have friends who didn't get blood clots from birth control pills. They just say that they went insane. Their words, not me. But that they just lost their damn minds. Like, it can fuck with us in so many different ways. So yes, that's the story of how I almost died.